Jupiter is the largest planet in the solar system. More than 1,300 Earths could fit inside this gas giant. It's also 2.5 times more massive than all the other planets of the solar system combined. But if you think this is mind-boggling, I've got some great news for you. Very recently, a team of astronomers have discovered a much bigger planet with the help of the Subaru telescope and the NASA Hubble Space Telescope. It's a Jupiter-like protoplanet orbiting a very young star, AB Aurigae. The star is probably still forming and is no more than 5 million years old. For comparison, our Sun is 4.6 billion years old. The young star is located at around 531 light-years away from Earth in the constellation of Aurigae. The star is shrouded in a thick, quickly moving layer of gas and dust. This disk feeds the growth of the star. Later, what's left of the disk will come together to form the elements of the planetary system. Planets, dwarf planets, comets, asteroids, you name it. But back to the newly discovered planet. It's a gas giant whose mass equals that of 9 Jupiters. Can you imagine this colossus? It takes the planet, named AB Aurigae B, almost 588 Earth years to complete just one journey around its parent star. Maybe because it's 93.9 AU, astronomical units, away from it. Now, why is the discovery of this planet so amazing? Because according to astronomers, it's been forming in a very bizarre way. Or should I say, is forming, since this gas giant is still in the process. Anyway, the unusual thing is that AB Aurigae B is coming together as a result of a top-down gravitational collapse of giant clouds of gas. But scientists say that a much more common model of planetary formation is when dust and rocks gradually accumulate around some kind of core. This proves the idea that there are numerous ways for planets to form. It can also mean that there probably are very diverse planetary systems in our home Milky Way galaxy. But AB Aurigae B isn't the largest exoplanet ever discovered. In 2005, astronomers spotted a mysterious space body. Later, they called it GQ Lupi b. The thing was orbiting a young star at a distance 2.5 times greater than that between the Sun and Pluto. Scientists came to the conclusion that the object was either a planet or a brown dwarf, which is basically a tiny star. If astronomers decide that GQ Lupi b is a planet, it will be the largest ever found, with a radius that is 3.5 times that of Jupiter. The biggest star we know about is called Scuti. This hypergiant has a radius that is about 1,700 times greater than that of the Sun. If you somehow manage to place Scuti in the center of the solar system, its edges would stretch far beyond Jupiter's orbit. As for the dust and gas streaming from the star, all this would extend beyond the orbit of Pluto. That's 400 times the Sun-Earth distance. A black hole is a spot in space where the pull of gravity is so strong that even light can't escape it. But why is gravity so powerful there? Because matter is squeezed into a teeny tiny space. Supermassive black holes, which can be many millions of times the mass of the Sun, tend to lurk in the centers of galaxies. The most massive black hole astronomers have discovered so far is TUN 618. Its mass is equal to that of 66 billion suns. It was the year 2010. With the help of the Fermi telescope, astronomers spotted something ginormous, something entering the Milky Way. Their discovery looked like massive blobs of matter that could only be observed in particular wavelengths of light. They were also about 25,000 light-years tall. Scientists think that the blobs, called Fermi bubbles, could be produced by our galaxy's central black hole. Space seems to be extremely deserted, but some places are even emptier than the rest, like supervoid in Eridanus. astronomers noticed this huge region of empty space in 2004. The area stretches 1.8 billion light-years across. It's mysteriously devoid of gas, dust, stars, and even dark matter. A nebula is a massive cloud of gas and dust floating in space. Some nebulae form when a star is nearing the end of its life and throws out loads of gas and dust. Others appear in regions where new stars are forming. The largest nebula we know about is the Tarantula Nebula. In its longest span, it measures over 1,800 light-years. This nebula, also known as 30 Doradus, is located around 170,000 light-years away from Earth. Unlike its namesake, the tarantula isn't dangerous. Quite the opposite. It's a stellar nursery, which means it's a region where tons of young stars are born. Even cooler, it's the most active star-forming area in our entire galactic neighborhood. In 2021, the biggest ever comet we know about entered our solar system. It was 85 miles across, and its icy nucleus was 50 times greater than the nucleus of the previous record breaker. The intruder's mass was a whopping 100,000 times bigger than that of the average comet. In fact, see 2014 UN 271, Bernardinelli-Bernstein, was so large that astronomers first classified it as a minor planet. Is it going to crash into Earth? Nah. It won't get closer than 1 billion miles to our beautiful green planet, and it won't happen until 2031. But could there be comets even bigger than that? Who knows, but the thought is terrifying. There are loads of bizarre things in the universe, and hypothetical nuclear pasta is one of them. If it does exist, nuclear pasta is the strongest material in the entire universe. It forms from the leftovers of extinguished stars when this substance gets squeezed into spaghetti-like tangles of material. It can theoretically break, but only if you apply 10 billion times the pressure needed to shatter steel. Pulsars are spherical space objects the size of a large city, but they pack more mass than the entire sun. They radiate 2 narrow beams of light, sending them in opposite directions. The Black Widow pulsar, just like its spider namesake, is munching on its partner. It's a lightweight brown dwarf star. The more material the pulsar consumes, the more slowly it spins. The energy the neutron star is losing in the process causes its companion star to dwindle. Haumea is a dwarf planet orbiting the Kuiper Belt. It's a donut-shaped ring of objects around the Sun that extends just beyond the orbit of Neptune. The mini-planet has a bizarre, elongated shape and 2 moons. The day on this planet lasts just 4 hours, which makes it the fastest-spinning large object in the solar system. But the most mysterious thing about Haumea is that the planet has a thin, 40-mile-wide ring circling it. What is it? Where did it come from? No one knows. Could be the result of a collision that happened in the distant past. The 18th brightest star in the night sky, Fomalhaut, is a terrifying sight. It's dubbed the Eye of Sauron because it looks like a ring of dust and debris circling it. It makes the star look like a giant eye staring into your soul. The intimidating star is more than twice the mass of the Sun. It's 25 light-years away from Earth, which isn't that far away considering distances in space. Look at this butterfly. Its wingspan is more than 3 light-years, and the structure inside this nebula is one of the most complicated ever observed. The nebula's central star, a white dwarf, is heated to an incredible 450,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It means it was formed from another gargantuan star, more than 5 times the size of the Sun. The white dwarf is surrounded by a thick disk of dust and gas at the equator. That's what probably makes the whole structure look like an hourglass or a butterfly.
During the recent years, scientists made two breakthrough discoveries about our universe. Thanks to new technologies, we've looked into the distant past. And we've learned something that can change our understanding of the universe forever. What are these discoveries and what do they mean to us? Let's find out. Recently, we unveiled the first color image from the James Webb Space Telescope. It's a mind-bending photo capturing thousands of ancient galaxies. This oldest documented light in the history of the universe dates back over 13 billion years. That's just 600 million years after the Big Bang. It's like getting a sneak peek into the universe's baby album. But that was just the beginning. Astronomers were expecting to see some tiny young galaxies. But what they found was a real surprise. Impossibly early, impossibly massive, and all that from just a tiny red dot. The lead author of the study, Ivo Lab, was working at the computer as usual, and suddenly he got two numbers. Age, 13 billion years. Weight, 100 billion stars. When he realized what that meant, he nearly spit out his coffee. But that red dot was just the beginning. The next day they found 5 more galaxies just like this. Turns out, these 6 massive galaxies are as old as the Milky Way itself. The entire research team was in disbelief. They were like, wait, what? These guys couldn't be that mature so early in time. Did we make a mistake? But nope. The James Webb Space Telescope, the new cool guy on the space block, just has some serious skills. It can see through dust clouds with its infrared vision and spot galaxies that were previously invisible. Move over Hubble. There's a new stargazer in town. But why is it shaking things up so much? Because this discovery affects our understanding of how galaxies formed. Let's try to explain. A long time ago, 13.8 billion years ago to be precise, our universe was born. It was chilling out for a while, and then it started to form the first galaxies. And these galaxies were full of gas and dust. Eventually, this gas started turning into stars. Some galaxies were more massive and had more stars, and some were lighter and had almost no stars at all. In any case, they all grew gradually. The stars in them were born slowly and smoothly. That's how our current models explain this. But these new observations from the James Webb Space Telescope show an unexpected surprise. Looks like, even in the early universe, our ancient friends had lots of stars. More than what we would ever expect. If that's the case, then these galaxies are like the overachievers of the universe. They skipped the small and gradual growth phase and went straight to being giant universe breakers. According to our current cosmological model, they shouldn't even exist. But they do, so it looks like after the Big Bang, the stars were forming much faster than we thought, which is pretty weird. This could mean that there's something missing in our understanding of the galaxy formation. As you can see, these universe breakers are really living up to their name, causing a potential total consensus among scientists. The universe was like, hey, I'm about to flip cosmology models upside down. But let's not jump to conclusions. There are many theories that could explain these mind-boggling discoveries without breaking the standard model. For example, maybe the light we're seeing isn't coming from stars at all, but from the swirling disks of doom around supermassive black holes. These colossal cosmic beasts can gobble up matter and spit out a dazzling light show. And James Webb Telescope's keen eye is picking up on these enigmatic accretion disks like never before. Or maybe these galaxies could be playing hide-and-seek with us. Maybe there's more to the story that we haven't seen yet. After all, the universe is vast and mysterious, and we've only just begun to scratch the surface. And whoa, we really need to slow down here. Before we even try to explain all this stuff, we need to confirm whether these ancient galaxies really are that old. Although even if they're actually just supermassive black holes, it still shows an astounding change. We'll have to wait about a year to find out. One thing's for sure, the James Webb Space Telescope has definitely taught us a valuable lesson. Expect the unexpected. And this is just the beginning of unexpected. Ivo Lab's team wasn't the only one who made such a huge breakthrough. There's also a team that claims that they've unlocked the secrets of the universe's past, and that's worth 2 Nobel Prizes. Move over James Webb Space Telescope, because this discovery came from an antenna that's smaller than a fridge and costs less than $5 million. Talk about space bargain hunting! the astronomers caught this signal that showed some surprises. It was coming from the earliest stars of our universe, back in the days when they were just beginning to twinkle. Say hi to our celestial ancestors again. Now, the signal was pretty weird. The temperatures were unusually low, and there was a pronounced wave that left astronomers scratching their heads. What could be causing all this? Well, there's a theory. Dark matter may have been at work, and if that's the case, then we can really be on the verge of a great discovery. Imagine you're looking at the night sky filled with stars, but there's something else there that you can't see. It's like an invisible cloak that covers the entire universe. Scientists call this mysterious stuff dark matter. Dark matter is like the ghost of our world. It doesn't emit, absorb, or reflect any light. We can't see it with telescopes or our eyes. That's why we call it dark matter. But if we can't detect it in any way, how do we know it exists? Because of its gravitational pull. One day we noticed that our understanding of how galaxies were created was incorrect. According to our calculations, they should have been some chaotic gas, but something held them together, turning them into spirals, like some kind of invisible glue. Then we thought, maybe this invisible glue really exists. If the moon was invisible, we would still suspect that it exists somewhere because its gravity affects the tides on Earth. This is also the case with dark matter. Its gravity influences the motion of galaxies and other cosmic objects. In fact, dark matter makes up a huge chunk of the universe, about 27% of it. Moreover, the normal matter we can see, like stars, planets, and galaxies, only make up about 5% of the universe. So even though we can't see dark matter, there's actually more of it in the universe than everything we can see. Scientists are still trying to figure out if dark matter exists and what it can be made of. Some theories suggest that it could be made up of exotic particles that are different from the particles that we're used to. Others think that it might be some kind of weird, undiscovered form of matter that doesn't interact with light at all. Anyway, it's an intriguing mystery, and if we ever confirm the existence of dark matter, our understanding of our world will change forever. So now you can understand why the excitement in the scientific community is palpable. If this discovery is confirmed, then we will get the first real proof of dark matter. This discovery may be even more important than the Big Bang itself because, as astronomers put it, we are made of star stuff, and so we are glimpsing at our origin. But of course, we still have to wait and explore all this in great detail. In science, one should never rush to conclusions. And while scientists study this stuff, we'll be here, on the edge of our seats waiting for the next space blockbuster to unfold. The universe never ceases to amaze us with its wonders. Who knew that such a small and humble antenna could unlock such cosmic secrets? It just goes to show that in the vastness of space, even the tiniest discoveries can have the biggest impact. Keep looking up, and who knows what other cosmic surprises are waiting to be uncovered.
Why do we look the way we look? Most of it's down to dear old planet Earth. Its atmosphere, gravity, that kind of stuff. When you go on a week-long beach getaway, you get a tan. Basic. But what about living on a whole other planet? One astronaut spent a whole year living on the International Space Station. Zero gravity means no healthy pressure on your body, so his bones got weaker. So did his muscles. It also gave him more space between his vertebrae, so he got a bit taller. And that's only a year. The more time you spend at the beach, the darker your tan gets. So, what if we move to Mars? The first major change you might notice, after a couple hundred years, is your brand new skeleton. Gravity on Mars is much lower than on Earth, so your muscles and bones would probably shrink. Not great for surviving on a new planet. Gravity would make us feel our weight differently. If you weighed 150 pounds on Earth, you'd only feel like you weighed about 50 pounds on Mars. You'd need to eat more to get stronger and bigger to make up for Mars's weak gravity. Sweet! Time to grow some larger and stronger bones, organs, muscles, everything. There'd be one more dramatic change. Your largest organ, your skin. It's the most important barrier that protects you from everything. Germs, wind, UV light, looking totally creepy, you name it, it does it. You might just need a whole new skin. How do you feel about orange. Sorry, people, green skin is totally sci-fi. Here's the deal. Carotenoids offer quite a nice protection against UV light. That's the stuff you find in carrots, sweet potatoes, bell peppers, tomatoes, pumpkins. A Mars farmer's market could make a fortune. The more of these veggies you eat, the more orange your skin's gonna get. If you followed a special diet and wore high-tech gear, chances are, one day, living on Mars might be totally normal. Living on Mercury would be really tough. It's the closest planet to the Sun, and it's definitely hotter than Earth, but weirdly, not hotter than Venus. It's really hot during the day, about 800 degrees, but at night, it drops to -290. Days on Mercury are kind of crazy. You know, when you finish the day, but you didn't really get a lot done? Problem solved. Move to Mercury. A day on this planet lasts about 58 Earth days. That means you'd have a lot of time to get ready for bed. My guess, though, you'd probably get kind of bored. One excellent solution. Somehow, become made of metal, like titanium, nickel, or platinum. Those guys can handle extreme conditions. Life on Venus would be way worse than Mercury or Mars. Pressure might be a tiny issue. You'd probably have one long, never-ending headache. Standing on Venus is like being 3,000 feet underwater. Oh, and that thing we need every moment of the day? Chocolate. Air? There's not a lot of that floating around on Venus. There's carbon dioxide everywhere, and the planet's surface is completely dry. That means it's gonna be hot. 870 degrees hot. There are a few species on Earth that can survive the boiling point of water, and maybe if they mutated somehow, they'd survive Venus's crazy heat. 266 degrees is the record so far, set by a species of microbes. So get ready for an epic body transformation. Want to live on Venus? You'd probably have to turn into a tiny microbe just to survive. Luckily, Venus's atmosphere has phosphine, which isn't great for humans, but microbes just love it. But since you're not a microbe, not yet anyway, you'd need to wear special gear to control the pressure and feed you air. It's not looking good. Maybe it'd be easier on Jupiter. Yeah! No, it's got no solid land. This planet's made of hydrogen and helium and is known as a gas giant. Unlike Saturn, you'd probably end up just floating around on it. It's like a giant cloud, and if you ever managed to land, it'd be like walking through a super thick fog. Temperatures fluctuate a lot here. It's freezing on the surface, and the atmosphere can be super hot below the surface. We don't really even know. If you lived on Jupiter, there'd be no spoken languages. The gas planet absorbs radio waves, so even if you could speak, no one would hear you anyway. And there'd be no music, so no dance parties. What's the point? People would have to communicate in sign language. Great, but it's not. The atmosphere on Jupiter is wild. All kinds of winds and gas clouds. You probably wouldn't even be able to see anything. So that's not gonna happen. Still, Jupiter is awesome to look at. It's so big that it can fit all the other planets in our solar system inside it, with room to spare. A trip to Saturn will set you back about a decade, and it'd be a big old waste of time. Saturn's mostly made up of layers of gas. It has no solid surface, so farming, building, or any other normal Earth activities are out of the question. Before landing on Saturn itself, you'd probably want to explore those iconic rings around it. You'd fail though, because the rings are made of millions of ice sprinkles floating in space. That's pretty hard to walk on. You might have thought that Saturn was going to be a good fit for you. Some layers of this gas giant sphere actually have quite a nice temperature. If you dive into Saturn, you'll get to a layer with liquid molecules and a cool 32 degrees. That's like northern Canada, Alaska, Sweden, except that you can't walk on it. Anyway, it's only one minor layer, and the rest of the planet is insanely cold. So I guess if you still want to live on Saturn, you've got some work to do. No biggie, It just gotta turn into a snowball or something. What about Uranus? Time is kinda weird on Uranus, so if you're out that way looking for a nice vacation spot, definitely choose this planet. A 2-week getaway on Earth lasts 3 years on Uranus. There's even a sea if you're up for a beach vacation. The only problem is that it's made of ammonia, that gross-smelling stuff they use for cleaning. But watch out where you land. If you get it wrong, you might end up spending a whole year without any sun. How would you change if you had to spend a whole year in the freezing dark Uranus winter? We'd need bigger eyes to see in the dark, plus more of that thicker skin to keep the cold out. We might even develop a new hearing system, like dolphins have. Neptune. It's another gas planet, but scientists think there's probably a dense core inside. If you took the plunge to live on Neptune, you'd probably turn into a space reptile or cosmic fish, endlessly floating around on the surface. Gravity on Neptune is just a little bit stronger than on Earth. Still, it'd be really hard to stay in one place. The wind there is super strong. You'd have to be much heavier to resist it. Time to eat again, woohoo! But this planet's really impossible to live on. Scientists don't even want to send another spacecraft there. Welcome to Pluto. Freezing cold, tiny, and super far away. Doesn't sound too exciting. It's even smaller than our moon. It would be so hard to stay on the planet. No more trampoline parks, people. You'd probably have to build yourself a huge machine that would spin you around, sort of a fake gravity machine. Still, you try spinning around all day, you'd need a brand new nervous system to avoid feeling queasy all the time. But Pluto's not all bad. There's a liquid water ocean beneath the surface, and ice mountains. If you got yourself a highly trained crew and a bunch of expensive gear, and regular supplies from Earth, nah, too much hassle. Spaghettification. Wonder if you can choose your own sauce? It's actually something you might experience if you ever tried to live in a black hole. It's the process of squeezing objects, like you, into long, thin cosmic strips. So, good news, you'll get much taller. Bad news, you'll be thinner than a single human hair.
Have we found another civilization? Is that a door to someone's home on another planet? Can we peek through the windows? After all, it was NASA's Curiosity rover that sent this image to Earth, and right now, this rover is exploring the surface of Mars. Unfortunately, astronomers were fast to disappoint us. They claimed that it was just a natural part of the Martian landscape. There are several clues that made them think it wasn't a real door. For example, it's tiny, a mere 3 feet high. But it might simply mean the Martians aren't that tall, you may object. But scientists keep insisting that what looks like a door is actually an opening in a rock created by natural forces, like winds and erosion. The thing is, if you look at the rock attentively, you may notice strata, the layers of silt that stand out because they're harder than the surrounding material. These strata dip here on the left and a bit higher on the right. They likely appeared around 4 billion years ago in a river or a wind-blown dune. Since the strata became visible, powerful Martian winds have eroded them even more, and now you can see that they disappear inside the door. And look at this. See those cracks? Yeah, those. That's how rocks weather on the red planet. This small cave probably formed when several fractures crossed the strata. A pretty large boulder might have fallen out under its own weight, and this created the door-shaped opening. Now, this theory is quite plausible, because even though the gravity on Mars isn't as strong as on Earth, it's still strong enough to do it. Besides, see that rock to the right of the opening? It has a suspiciously smooth vertical edge. It must be the culprit. It probably fell out not so long ago, and Martian winds haven't got rid of it yet. And winds on Mars can be exceptionally powerful. This planet is infamous for its intense dust storms. Sometimes they kick up so much dust that you can see it through a telescope on Earth. Such storms occur every year and cover continent-sized areas. They also last for weeks at a time. But besides these annual storms, there are even larger storms that happen much more rarely, but they're more powerful and way more intense. Those are called global dust storms because they encircle the entire planet. But even if you got caught in the most severe storm on Mars, it wouldn't be as terrible as you might think. The wind speed on the worst Martian storms reaches 60 miles an hour tops. Hurricane-force winds on our planet can be twice that speed. You should also keep in mind that the atmosphere on the red planet is 1% as dense as the atmosphere on Earth. That's why, if you decided to fly a kite on Mars, you'd need the wind to be much faster than on Earth. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be able to get the kite in the air. In other words, even though it's quite windy on Mars, it doesn't feel as intense as on our home planet. Oh, by the way, you might have noticed I keep calling Mars the red planet. Why? Look, our neighbor is covered in dust, soil, and rock that is rich in iron oxide. That's what gives the surface of the planet its trademark red hue. And look, there's the trademark. Nah, just kidding. Mars is the fourth planet from the Sun. Not so far away from the star, you might say, and still, it's a cold and deserted world. The average temperature on its surface is minus 81 degrees Fahrenheit. But if you ever visit one of its poles during the wintertime, bring a lot of warm clothing, because the temperatures are likely to drop to minus 220 degrees there. In the summer, though, you might feel very comfortable in some regions. There, the temperatures can rise to 70 degrees, not very different from what we're used to. Mars is one of the most explored space bodies in the solar system. At the moment, NASA has 2 rovers roaming the red landscapes, Curiosity and Perseverance. There's also one lander called InSight and helicopter Ingenuity, nicknamed Ginny. Perseverance is the most advanced and largest rover ever sent to another world. The journey to the red planet took 203 days, and Ginny traveled to Mars attached to the belly of Perseverance. Sounds cozy. And now, I'm going to tell you something really curious. Let's say you're a Babylonian who lived around 5,000 years ago. Babylonia was an empire in ancient Mesopotamia. Just think back to 6th grade. Anyway, your neighbor comes up to you and says, "What day is it today?" And what do you answer? "It's Mars Day." Wait, what? When the ancient Babylonians created the week, they decided to divide it into 7 parts. Each day got named after some space body, like the Moon, the Sun, Venus, and so on. Mars Day was on Tuesday. The Babylonians believed that each of these space objects influenced their lives on the day named after it. And since Mars was red in color, they associated it with aggression. That's why on Tuesdays, they had special ceremonies to avoid the influence of the unfriendly planet. Indeed, Mars might seem unfriendly to a tired traveler. Its atmosphere is very thin. Its volume is a mere 1% of the atmosphere on Earth. In other words, there's 99% less air to breathe on the red planet. Mars's atmosphere is mostly made up of carbon dioxide. At such high concentrations, it's toxic for us humans. And if you were looking for some oxygen to breathe on Mars, you'd come away empty-handed. There's only 0.1% of oxygen in the air on the red planet. That's definitely not enough for you to survive there. At the moment, Mars has 2 moons, Deimos and Phobos. Astronomers think they may be asteroids once caught in the gravitational field of the planet. The moons are shaped like potatoes. That's because their mass is too little for gravity to give them a spherical form. Potatoes, eh? Maybe they should be renamed mashed and au gratin. One day, Mars will get a ring of its own. It might happen in the next 20 to 40 million years. Will Brightside be there? Stay tuned. Mars's gravitational forces will tear apart the planet's largest moon, Phobos. Hey, it really will get mashed. Some chunks of the former moon will crash into Mars, and others will break apart and create the ring around the planet. This ring might exist for at least 100 million years. The surface of Mars is cut by a huge canyon system known as Valles Marineris. Sounds like a pasta sauce. If it were on Earth, it'd stretch all the way from New York to California, over 3,000 miles. At its widest part, the largest canyon on Mars is 200 miles, and it reaches 4 miles at its deepest point. If you still have difficulties imagining the sheer size of this natural phenomenon, here you go. Valles Marineris is 10 times the size of the Grand Canyon on Earth. Now, since we're on the subject of gigantic things, let's talk about Olympus Mons. This is the largest volcano in the solar system, and it's on Mars too. It's 3 times as tall as Mount Everest on our planet, and that's the tallest mountain above sea level. And the base of Olympus Mons is as large as the state of New Mexico. Now, scientists think there could have been water on Mars in the past. What made them think so? They found lots of ancient river valley networks and lake beds on the surface of the red planet. Plus, on Mars, there are minerals and rocks that could only form in liquid water. Mars might even have experienced terrible floods 3.5 billion years ago. These days, there's still some water on the red planet, but Mars's atmosphere is too thin for this water to stay in its liquid form on the surface. Now, it only exists in the form of water ice. You can find it just under the surface of the planet in its polar regions. The only place where this water is visible is at the North Polar Ice Cap. Also, sometimes, salty water flows down crater walls and hillsides, and there are tiny quantities of water in the planet's atmosphere, but it only exists as vapor. So, as a vacation spot, I think I'll pass.
Hold on to your space helmets because NASA's Curiosity rover has just stumbled upon the wildest rock formation ever. And on April Fool's Day, isn't that just the weirdest coincidence? The device captured some images with some rocks that look like dragon bones. Now, let me take you back to 2012 when Curiosity made its grand entrance on Martian soil. It was like the queen bee of rovers, the biggest and most capable one at the time. And boy, has it been making waves since then. It's even discovered evidence of water and organic molecules on Mars. These findings were giant leaps in our quest to find out if Mars ever had its own little creatures. But hey, let's not forget that Curiosity is no spring chicken anymore. It's been trotting around Mars for a solid 11 years, and its heyday may have come and gone with the launch of the shiny new Perseverance rover. Nevertheless, Curiosity still manages to capture our imagination with its knack for spotting familiar-looking rocks. From objects shaped like fish backbones to ones that resemble traffic lights, Curiosity has given us plenty to marvel at. But now the internet is exploding with excitement over the jaw-dropping images from Curiosity's masked camera. People are going bonkers over what can only be described as dragon bones. One astrobiologist acknowledged we've seen our fair share of weird-looking objects on Mars, but this one exceeded all expectations. The current theory is that these unique ripples on the structure were formed after a whole lot of erosion, probably caused by the Martian winds. Now, you might be thinking, okay, cool, but what's the big deal about a funky rock? Well, for starters, it's a reminder of just how much we still have to uncover about our mysterious red neighbor. While we're gazing over potential dragon bones and daydreaming about interplanetary adventures, Curiosity has its serious hat on. Its main mission is to gather as much data as possible and figure out if Mars was ever a cozy home for teeny-tiny microbial life forms. It isn't the first time our trusty Curiosity rover has stumbled upon something truly out of this world. Our robotic explorer buddy has also given us a peek at a teeny-tiny rock on the red planet. It bears an uncanny resemblance to a fossilized book. Can you imagine stumbling upon a Martian library? On the 3,800th Martian day of its mission, our adventurous rover captured an intriguing snapshot of this unusual discovery. Using its nifty Mars-hand lens imager attached to its robotic arm, Curiosity snapped a pic of this rock that looks like it's been plucked straight from a librarian's wildest dreams. Before you get too carried away with fantasies of outer space reading materials, let's clarify the dimensions of this rock. While it may resemble a book, it's pint-sized in comparison. In fact, it's only a mere 1 inch across. So don't go expecting the next Martian bestseller to hit the shelves anytime soon. It's more of a pocket-sized edition, perfect for a quick read during interplanetary commutes. Now, before you get too excited about this discovery, do know that NASA officials commented the peculiarly shaped rocks are pretty common on Mars. Also, billions of years of relentless Martian winds have swept away everything except these uniquely shaped remnants. Curiosity has quite the eye for spotting unusual formations. Back in February 2022, our rover pal stumbled upon a mineral flower with branching patterns that looked like it had been styled by a florist. It measured a petite 0.4 inch in width, and just a few weeks later, on February 16th, Curiosity managed to capture some rocky evidence of ancient lakes, featuring teeny ripples and waves frozen in time. If you thought Mars was just a desolate red wasteland, think again. Scientists have even discovered larger-scale shapes etched into the Martian surface by ancient water. For instance, There's a rock formation that bears an uncanny resemblance to the adorable face of a teddy bear. Who knew Mars had a cuddly side? And to top it off, there's another rock that looks like the spitting image of the frizzy-haired cartoon character. But curiosity isn't just about oddities and peculiarities. Remember that time on February 2nd when the rover unveiled the first clear images of sun rays on Mars? Picture this. As the sun dips below the Martian horizon during sunrises or sunsets, its rays create a mesmerizing sight as they pierce through gaps in the clouds. It's like Mother Nature's own laser light show. There are even images online with a so-called doorway on Mars. And no, it's not a secret passage for little green Martians to hop in and out of, if that's what you're thinking. The internet went bonkers when Curiosity captured a snapshot that seemed to reveal an object resembling a door. Cue the weird theories and intergalactic excitement, nothing to worry about, as experts have chimed in with a down-to-earth explanation. According to specialists who know a thing or two about Mars geology, this particular structure is most likely the result of natural erosion. Boring answer, I know, but erosion is yet again to blame here. However, some scientists have also chimed in with a dash of humor on the matter. They pointed out that the door stands at a modest height of less than 3 feet. So even if we were to believe it's a doorway for Martians, we'd have to imagine a particular type of tiny extraterrestrial beings, like Martian hobbits. But let's get back to reality, shall we? The consensus among experts is that this door is nothing more than a shallow opening in the rock, cleverly crafted by the forces of nature. Those visible layers were likely deposited around 4 billion years ago under sedimentary conditions, potentially in a river or a wind-blown dune. The winds on Mars have been hard at work, eroding these layers over time, leaving behind the intriguing features we see today. And if you look closely, you'll notice a few natural vertical fractures scattered throughout the image. These fractures are a result of rocks weathering on Mars, and the small cave-like structure we've affectionately nicknamed the door seems to have formed at the intersection of these fractures and the aforementioned layers. It's almost as if a gigantic Martian boulder decided to take a tumble, creating this whimsical cave entrance. There's also a famous Mars crater that's not just your ordinary, run-of-the-mill hole in the ground. It's chock full of shiny opal gemstones. According to a cool new study, those mysterious halos of rocks surrounding cracks in the Martian crater might actually be made up of water-rich opal gemstones. Can you imagine that? Mars, the planet of bling! Curiosity yet again came to the rescue and did some serious snooping around. It seems there's an ancient dried-up lakebed on Mars that is teeming with opal gemstones. These objects could be evidence that water and rock have been having a grand old time beneath the Martian surface. Much more recently than anyone had previously thought, that is. Now, when scientists start talking about water, you know they're on the hunt for signs of life. After all, water is pretty crucial for life as we know it. But here's the catch. Water isn't flowing on Mars anymore. So these clever scientists have to put on their detective hats and search for geological signs that water once existed there. What does opal have to do with water on the Martian surface? Well, to make opal, you need rocks with a whole lot of silica and some good old H2O. There's more. Researchers also dove deep into the Curiosity rover's image archive and discovered that these opal-rich halos are not just hanging out in one spot. Nope. They seem to be spread out all over the place in Gale Crater, which is like a huge ancient lakebed. So what did these clever scientists do next? They ran some tests, of course. Using Curiosity's fancy instruments, they confirmed that these light-colored halos do, in fact, contain opal. All this data and those cool fracture halo pictures from earlier in the mission led the researchers to a mind-boggling conclusion. Water must have been hanging out all over Gale Crater for a long time after the ancient lake dried up. This means that life might have existed on Mars and for a bit longer than we'd been guessing. Who knows, maybe even into Mars's modern geological period, which, get this, started a whopping 2.9 billion years ago.
If an asteroid like Apophis hits Earth, we will be destroyed. Massive earthquakes will strike, and tsunamis will flood everything. Apophis is a billion-year-old celestial body that has been in the solar system since its inception. So you might be thinking, well, how likely is it that this giant space stone will collide with our planet in 2029? Well, let's find out, shall we? Apophis is a big, bad asteroid discovered in 2004 by the Kitt Peak National Observatory in Arizona. Since then, it has proudly held the title of one of the most dangerous asteroids ever located. It's around 1,100 feet wide, which is a bit bigger than the Empire State Building and the Eiffel Tower. Because of how scary it is, it was named Apophis, like the Egyptian immortal creature that was considered to bring eternal darkness and destruction to Earth. Oh boy. In 2021, researchers had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to study this floating rock when it passed near our planet, and we'll come back to that in a minute. Now, some scientists say that there is a small chance of Apophis hitting the Earth on Friday, April 13, 2029. The Yarkovsky effect is to blame for this, since it can slightly nudge this space rock towards Earth. This effect originates from the uneven emission of thermal photons from a rotating celestial object, resulting in a fascinating force exerted upon it in space. These emitted photons possess momentum and play a pivotal role in shaping the dynamics of the body. The asteroid has two sides, light and dark, just like the Moon. The light side faces the Sun and is warmer than the dark side. But the thing also turns, so the sides constantly change direction and temperature. This change could be detrimental because it slightly pushes Apophis toward Earth. Unfortunately, nobody knows how the Yarkovsky effect will influence the asteroid's path. On the other hand, on the asteroid's last flyby of Earth in 2021, astronomers used radar to take accurate measurements of its trajectory and confidently concluded Apophis will safely miss Earth in 2029 by about 20,000 miles and won't bother us again for at least 100 years. Now, generally speaking, every 8,000 years, our planet is hit by a falling star that has similar dimensions to those of Apophis. The last time we were hit by a slightly smaller meteor was in 2013. A new spacecraft developed by NASA called the Osiris Rex was launched in 2016 to collect samples from another slightly less terrifying celestial body called Bennu. 4 years later, it finally arrived at the thing, got some samples, quickly said goodbye to Bennu, and started traveling back towards Earth. The samples were safely stored in a capsule dropped in Utah. So far, this has been the most significant sample ever taken from an asteroid. After the delivery, the spacecraft didn't waste any time and started chasing Apophis. Now, Osiris Rex has been renamed to Osiris Apex and is currently playing tag with Apophis. With some luck, on the 2nd of April 2029, when the asteroid zips close by Earth, the spacecraft will reach Apophis and land on it. It will stay on Apophis for 18 months, collecting valuable information and taking thousands of pictures. The asteroid will be monitored with the help of powerful telescopes. At some point, Apophis will get too close to the Sun, and then all the monitoring work will be on Osiris's Apex back. If you live in Europe, West Asia, or Africa, you're one of those lucky people who will have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see Apophis with the unaided eye. It'll be visible in the sky in these regions in 2029, and those who have telescopes will be able to spot it once again in 2036. Osiris Apex will experience some problems because the asteroid has a thick crust, and the spacecraft won't be able to collect data as easily as it did with Bennu. Osiris Apex has a unique thruster that will blow all the dust from Apophis while landing. This will be a perfect chance to analyze the surface of the asteroid to see what it's made of. The craft will spend 1.5 years mapping the asteroid, trying to detect changes in its shape. All this research will show how the celestial body is likely to move so we can better design plans to protect Earth from such things. In 2025, NASA is also going to launch the mission Apophis Pathfinder, and it will be the first spaceship to ever touch this asteroid. It will land approximately a year after its launch. Also, NASA has proposed sending a swarm of tiny craft into space to help humanity develop effective protective tactics against asteroid strikes. We know that Apophis originated in the primary asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. In the past million years, this celestial body has changed its path because of the considerable influence of Jupiter's gravitation. Now it seems like it favors the Sun more, meaning this asteroid will come very close to Earth. That's why it's classified as a near-Earth celestial body. A lot of tests and research have been done to find a way to deal with asteroids. Some solutions include drilling and detonating the space body from inside, or testing new technologies, like attaching rockets to it and trying to steer it away from Earth. We can also hit it with something moving at high speeds to make it change its course. Apophis is an S-type asteroid made of rocks and minerals like iron and nickel, and is shaped like a peanut. It can tell us a lot about the past and possibly the future. Sampling this space object could reveal how life on Earth began and how plants appeared. There are many theories that suggest that water arrived on our planet on an asteroid or a comet. Asteroids are like priceless time capsules. Unlike rocks on Earth, which have undergone thousands of changes, like erosion, most celestial bodies are still intact and much easier to study. When meteors fall on Earth, they get covered in debris that's impossible to clean. That's why studying Apophis while it's still in space is so important. Also, some asteroids are made of precious metals like platinum. Right now, we have a high demand for metals that we use in production, and mining metals on Earth is quite tricky. Just one large meteor might have iron, nickel, gold, and platinum that could last us millions of years. If Apophis has this amount of metals, well, we'd want to break it down and bring it back to Earth. One space rock could be worth quadrillions of dollars, making space mining highly profitable. And still, it would cost us more to get it back to Earth than to dig up these materials here. As technology progresses and new kinds of rockets are developed, this might become possible at some point. So, even though we're safe for the next 100 years from Apophis, you probably still want to see what would happen if something like it did impact. Come on, sure you do. Well, first let me tell you, you'll hear the sound of the collision and know what's happened even if you're miles away. You should leave your house or apartment immediately. Shortly after the impact, massive earthquakes will strike, and many tall buildings will fall. So, staying away from cities might be your best option if you have a choice. But don't escape by car. There will be massive traffic jams, and everyone will panic. Going on foot or by bike is your best option in this scenario. A prime way of transportation will be traveling by plane, so if you've always wanted to get that pilot license, now you've got a good excuse. If you have time, take along extra snacks and water, and an extra pair of socks. It's nice to live by the ocean or the sea, but in this scenario, it's the worst place to be, because giant tsunami waves will hit coastlines after the impact. If you live far away from the impact area, the tsunami might take 30 hours to arrive. You'll have a bit of time to prepare. Incredible news has recently spread across the internet. NASA has discovered evidence of a parallel universe. But is this actually the truth? Well, there is a grain of truth in this story, but it's not that simple. Let's consider it. Perhaps you've seen the articles that said NASA has finally found a parallel universe. This story was widely publicized, and people got divided into two camps: those who took this news at face value and those who considered it all complete nonsense. But both sides aren't exactly right. Let's start from the beginning. The discovery was made by NASA's ANITA. This name stands for the Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna. Yeah, it was designed to study neutrinos. Neutrinos are high-energy cosmic particles. They're incredibly small, lack any charge, and have almost no mass. Trillions of such particles pass through our bodies every second, and we don't even notice them, all because they almost don't affect ordinary matter. That's how insignificant they are. On average, in our entire life, each of us gets affected by a maximum of one neutrino. So basically, hunting neutrinos is like hunting ghosts. To catch them, you would have to send a whole stream of these particles through a giant piece of lead, and it has to be trillions of miles thick. At the same time, you have a 50-50 chance that you'll stop one of them. Therefore, in order to detect them, scientists had to come up with some clever tricks. We know that neutrinos, like other similar particles, come to us from outer space. Ooh. They travel to Earth from the Sun, stars, and even from the Big Bang itself. Some of them come to us from particularly big sources, such as black holes, supernova, pulsars, and even from various unidentified objects. Some of these particles have particularly high energy, and for scientists, these neutrinos are the most interesting ones. But, oddly enough, most high-energy neutrinos don't actually come to us from afar. They form right here, next to Earth. This process has a cute name: particle shower. Well, this is how you can explain it in simple words. A granny particle gets into Earth's atmosphere. Usually it's a particle with very high energy. Then it generates several children that have less energy. Each of them then makes more grandchildren whose energy is even less than theirs, and so on, until we have a giant family tree of low-energy particles. In the end, there may be billions of them. During this process, piles of neutrinos are created. Then they begin to sink deep into our Earth. During their journey through the planet, they touch the upper layers of its crust or ice, for example, Antarctica's ice. When faced with all these obstacles, they create radio pulses, and as you might have guessed, these are the exact radio pulses that scientists are trying to find. It may be a surprise to you, but Antarctica is pretty deserted, you think? And that's why it's the best place to study microscopic particles, which usually can barely be traced. There won't be any interference or anything like that. We can catch these pulses with the help of powerful antennas. NASA places these antennas on balloons that can rise as much as 20 miles above Earth's surface. That's how they've been tracking these neutrinos for the past years. Alright, now we know what Anita is doing. But what about that parallel universe stuff? Nah, don't worry, we're getting there. In 2018, Anita began receiving abnormal radio signals that caused quite a stir in the scientific community. Remember how neutrinos come to us from outer space and then gradually sink deep into our planet? So, recently, Anita has discovered neutrinos that didn't descend from space as usual, but rather rose up from Earth. In other words, these particles, called tau neutrinos, basically travel back in time. But how is this possible? Scientists began to research them. At first, they thought that maybe it was a detector error or an error in interpreting the data. But no, everything was correct. Something very exotic was happening. If so, then first we must try to find a simple explanation. What if these tau neutrinos just came to Antarctica from some other source? Maybe they came to Earth from the other side and somehow passed through the boundary. To test this theory, scientists decided to seek help from another cool neutrino observatory called IceCube. Yes, very cool. This observatory is located near the South Pole. It consists of 5,160 optical detectors buried in ice, and all these powerful detectors are designed to detect neutrinos. Anita researchers were like, "Hey guys, we found some strange radio signals. Could you please check where they come from?" "No problem," IceCube replied, and started their research. And as a result, they found nothing. Yep, IceCube didn't detect any signal sources at all. It turned out that these strange particles had basically appeared out of nowhere. How could this be? Scientists tested many different theories, but none of them could explain the situation accurately. Later, IceCube published an article which basically said, "Nope, we have no idea where these signals came from and how to explain them in terms of the standard model of the universe." Oh, now it's getting interesting. So, what on earth are these signals? Having exhausted normal explanations, scientists began to consider ideas that go beyond our understanding. One of them said that perhaps these particles had come to us from a parallel universe where time flows in the opposite direction. This crazy-sounding theory is the result of the famous multiverse theory. According to it, about 14 billion years ago, when the Big Bang happened, two twin universes were born. One of them was ours, and the other was a parallel one. And they're almost identical in everything, except for some things. For example, time in this parallel universe doesn't move in the same way as it does in ours. It moves backward. Besides, everything there would look upside down to us, as if we're looking in a mirror. Therefore, scientists call it the antiverse and believe it could be filled with antimatter. And even though all this may seem strange and crazy to us, for those who live in that antiverse, their way of life would be quite normal. In fact, they would rather find us, the strange ones. So these mysterious neutrinos could be born in this antiverse. Let's say they somehow existed there and then accidentally got into our world, where we were able to detect them. The idea of the multiverse itself is really incredible. If it's true, then it may mean that there is an infinite number of realities, many of which are much better than ours. Quantum mechanics even says that it's quite possible that every second of every day, any of your decisions divides the universe into two. And so there are quintillions of parallel universes where our lives have gone very differently. Something like this is hard to even imagine. Of course, it would be great if we could find a way to get into another universe, and if these mysterious tau neutrino particles were able to cross the boundaries of two worlds, well, maybe we can do that too? But unfortunately, this phenomenon alone isn't enough to say whether the multiverse theory is true or not. This is just one of several possible options. At this stage of human development, we cannot prove or disprove this theory. Maybe someday in the future we'll find out the truth, but definitely not now. The only thing we can say now, after this discovery, is that we've found strange radio signals which standard physics can't explain. So we need to move in this direction and study them to learn more about this incredible phenomenon. But people like to dream about space, so no wonder we've gotten so excited about this. And it would be great if one day it turned out that this theory was actually true. The theory of parallel universes has been popular in various movies and books for a very long time. Where would you go if you found out that you could travel between realities? Me? I'd look for a different reality of ice cream.